It's March, and around here that means my birthday is coming, along with the first day of spring. It also means celebrating one of my favorite holidays, St. Patrick's Day. Irish music will abound, parades will happen, and the green beer will flow. Cold days are still clinging on till spring, so it's still a good time to snuggle in with a blanket on windy March days and read a great poem. We looked through our Irish poetry collection and found the Lake Isle of Innisfree by William Butler Yeats. We could hear the lake water lapping at the shore as we read it, but what makes this Irish poem so great? Well, let's jump in and listen to his poem.
I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and bottles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. While I stand on the roadway or on the pavements grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core.
Did you hear the bees buzzing in the hive? How about the crickets? Did you feel a sense of relaxation as you read it? Each and every single image and sound in the poem was chosen carefully by Yeats to, quote, unlock the power of unconscious associations and spiritual experiences, end quote. William Butler Yeats went through about 5 phases in his poetry. This poem is considered by some to be the best in the first phase of his career. His poems during this time period, from 1885 to 1902, use colorful and complex descriptions, ornate details, sleepy musical language, and at times, some vagueness. All these features make for imaginative settings where human and superhuman figures interact, like fairies. His immaturity as an artist and rich artistic potential are clear in this period. Now, when Yeats began publishing poetry in this phase, his poems had a romantic and lyrical style, focusing on love, loss, and the Irish myths he had grown up hearing about. Romantic poetry used familiar rhyme schemes, meter, and structure. Poems like the Lake Isle of Innisfree are thought of as lighter than his later work, but it's still pretty darn sophisticated. As Yeats matured, he explored mysticism, the occult, philosophy, and Irish nationalist politics. He had a frustrating relationship with a woman named Maud Gunn, which helped fuel his changing style and banished the idealism of his younger years. His connection to artists and modernist poets at the turn of the century led him to pick up some of their styles and conventions. Modernists engaged in politics, challenged poetic conventions and literary traditions, and rejected the norm that poetry had to be lyrical and pretty. Yeats' poetry got edgier and darker and more concise as a result, but he never fully abandoned the conventions that gave his poetry shape. I'm thankful for that. Now, over time, Yeats developed a belief in fate and historical determinism, and saw everything in cycles and patterns, which he described as a gyre, with a person or events moving from the smallest point to the largest before moving along to another interlocking gyre. Yeats also argued that symbolism is the heart of poetry. The use of images and sounds evokes subtle, complex emotions and can embody indistinct feelings. When all of the emotions are synthesized, we can see the sameness of our human existence. We can tap into the true essence of humanity. Now, for Yeats, it's all about joining up the abstract with the concrete. You can analyze art, but there is still a level of the subjective to it, and through this, an experience is felt, a pull from what he called the universal world soul, or animus mundi. The animus mundi is the common bank of memory shared by all humanity across all generations. Yeah, he was a complicated guy. Yeats wrote this poem in 1888, but it wasn't even published until December 13th in 1890 in the British periodical, The National Observer. The shape of the poem itself reflects the musical shape of the language. It has 12 lines separated into 3 and an A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F rhyme scheme. It looks like this. Now, there's too much variation for it to be strictly one kind of meter, so we'll just say it's loosely iambic, which is no doubt on purpose to give the poem a sense of the otherworldliness the island elicits. There are multiple uses of literary devices, from the consonants of the L sounds, such as live alone in the be loud glade, to alliteration and lake water lapping, to metaphors such as veils of the morning and the deep heart's core. Imagery and repetition are the workhorses in this poem that create the mood and tone and setting of escaping the modern world for something that calls to so many of us, no matter where we are. Yeats repeats the word I 6 times. For example, he repeats, "I will arise and go now," 2 times to great effect. The statement, "I will arise and go now," was a biblical allusion to the words used in the story of the prodigal son, a story Jesus told about 2 sons, one who stays and works hard on the family land, and then the other who takes his inheritance early and squanders it, and eventually, when he hits rock bottom, arises and goes back to his father to beg mercy. The prodigal must return to his roots, just like the narrator of the poem. His Irish readers would have gotten this, be they Catholic or Protestant. Now, the imagery in the poem is key to the whole thing, though. From the name Innisfree, meaning Heather Island, to the cabin made with wattles, to the honeybees in the glade, to the peace enveloping him in the morning mist, aka veils of the morning, to crickets, purple glows, songbirds, to lapping water, to gray pavements, it's a sensory buffet that fills the reader and puts them right there with him every step of the poem. We all have a happy place, a place that either gives us comfort, gives us peace, evokes inspiration, or simply just a feeling of connection to what Yeats called the animus mundi. The Lake Isle of Innisfree is the narrator's place, and no matter where he goes, he feels the pull and connection to it. That connection is in the deep heart's core, the deepest part of who we are. The Lake Isle of Innisfree exemplifies the style of Yeats as an attempt to create a form of poetry that was wholly Irish. The lake itself is an uninhabited island near where Yeats summered as a kid. Yeats said the inspiration for the poem came from a sudden memory of his childhood while he walked down Fleet Street in 1888. He said, quote, "I had still the ambition, formed in my teens, of living in imitation of Thoreau on Innisfree, a little island in Loch Gill, and when walking through Fleet Street, very homesick, I heard a little tinkle of water and saw a fountain in a shop window which balanced a little ball upon its jet, and began to remember lake water. From the sudden remembrance came my poem Innisfree, my first lyric with anything in its rhythm of my own music." Leading up to the writing of this particular poem, he had begun to concentrate his poetry on Irish subjects, but had to move with his family to London at the end of 1886. It didn't stop him, though, as he wrote poems, plays, novels, and short stories, all with Irish characters and settings. In addition, he did book reviews, usually on Irish topics. In London, Yeats met Maud Gunn, a tall, beautiful, well-known young woman devoted to Irish nationalism. He fell in love with Gunn and courted her for over 2 decades, despite finding out that she had 2 children from a long affair. Gunn encouraged Yeats in his nationalistic politics and work. Gunn shared Yeats' interest in occultism and spiritualism, and then in 1890 joined the Golden Dawn, a secret society that practiced ritual magic. Yeats remained an active member of the Golden Dawn for 32 years. During the 1890s, Yeats became interested in poetic techniques and made friends with English poet Lionel Johnson. Together in 1890, they helped found the Rhymers Club, a group of London poets who met to read and discuss their poems. The club's influence is seen in the lush density of Yeats' poetry of the times, culminating in his collection, The Wind Among the Reeds, in 1899. Although Yeats abandoned that style, he stayed firm to the rhymer's resolve that poets should work at rhythm and cadence, at form and style. I feel the urge to mention 2 things here. 1, Yeats eventually came to his senses and married Georgie Hyde Lees in 1917 and had 2 children with her. Unfortunately, he was unfaithful on occasion. And second, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature in December of 1923, which was extremely significant given the newness of the Irish state. So, there we have it. How did you like the imagery of the poem? Did it make you think of your happy place? Do you think of that place where you go, carrying it with you in the core of who you are? Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you next time.